Right, let's finish off the week in style, shall we, with some hobby nightmares. The weather is closing in, folks. It's getting colder. Let's warm ourselves up with some nightmarishly hobby good times, shall we? Alright, first up today is Dan, who says, it's titled, Tripping Across the Ditch. Alright? Good evening, most northern of all exiles. This is I, Dan the Kiwi, who has written in previously about their first and last try-hard Warhammer Fantasy Battle tournament. This is a long one, so I'm happy to wait for the right Friday for it to show up. If it doesn't fit, is too poorly written, or you plain old dislike it, it's all good in the hood. Well, I did like it, at least the first half of it. I like to keep half of these things to make sure I'm getting at least some surprise when reading through them. Sitting back with a belly full of steak and veggies, cold beer in hand, I'd like to regale you with a tale from a couple of years ago. A tale involving the second most glorious nation in the world, Australia, and one Kiwi's lessons on if it can go wrong, it will. This story is more suited to Feels Friday and it doesn't involve any hobby at all, but will hopefully get a few chuckles out of yourself and your avid listeners. Okay, well the second one today has a lot of hobby in it, so we'll go with this one to warm us up, to get us going. Not that you need warming up in Australia, apparently it is balls hot down there at the moment. Lucky people. The Great Plague of 2020 was ending. The borders were starting to open across the world, and after nearly 2 years of being trapped inside at home or at work, I was feeling incredibly listless. I'd been making plans to travel to the US of A later in the year, but felt, since I've never travelled internationally as an adult, it would be a good idea to test the waters with a small jaunt across the ditch to Australia. Despite living close, I'd always been pretty busy, too poor, or something would occur to stop me from making the quick flight over. Over the many years of playing World of Warcraft, I'd made many friends in various states and cities, so always had a plethora of choices on who to visit. Cool. I know a lot of people who live in New Zealand, like, barely ever leave, and they're looking at the country. I can be like, yeah, I can see why. I decided on going to Cairns, a city on the northeastern coast where a group of my World of Warcraft and role-playing buddies lived. From what they had said, it was a nice but quiet place, and since at the time I wasn't really feeling like interacting with the heaving masses that live in Sydney or Melbourne, I thought, what the hell, a long weekend of relaxation somewhere warm is just the ticket. Step 1, sorting out the flight. This was very simple. I toddled into the local mall, spent 45 minutes talking to the TA, then slapped down my credit card and paid the $1,800 and left with a thick sheaf of paper. Step 2, sorting out accommodation. Again, quite easy. I spoke to my friends for hotel recommendations, jumped online, plugged in my card credentials, and paid the $1,250 for the inner city hotel. Job's a good one. $1,250, dude. That's a lot of money. So altogether, you're pretty much $3,000, just over $3,000. Yeah. Step 3, taking care of travel documentation. This is unfortunately where the wheels fell off. And to get into Australia at the time, it required an up-to-date plague shot. A clean test taken no more than 2 days prior to the flight, then some data entered into the Aussie government website. The first part was easy. The third part was easy. But the second, oh boy. 2 days prior to the flight, I had booked an official test in the city. I live about an hour outside of the city in the boondocks, but it's quiet. Close to work, and has everything a man needs. 17 different takeaway places, a couple of pubs, 2 second-hand bookstores, and a small mall to cover everything else. Happily jaunting my way into the city, I ignored the rabble protesting outside the Parliament, travelled another 30 minutes to the testing centre, and had my nostrils violently swabbed by what seemed to be a middle-aged barber surgeon. That happened to me too. When I was going to America, that happened to me. I had this, so when I got to the, I was really bricking it because I had travelled from Manchester, went Liverpool, Manchester, and then from Manchester down to London for my flight to Chicago, right? This is at the end of 2020, so this is in December 2020. And there's only like one flight a day because, of course, you know, the plague puts everything into lockdown. You can't really do many flights. And we missed the one flight that day because the flight from Manchester down south was cancelled, right? So they put me up in a hotel, which is great. Very nice swanky hotel right in the inner terminal, right there, so I can just walk down and get my plane the next day. That'd be great. But at this moment in time, I needed to get a test to get on the plane the next day, right? So I am absolutely bricking it, because what if it comes back positive? I've then got to stay in the hotel, then go and get my flight back to Manchester, and then go back to Liverpool to wait 2 weeks to then come back again and do it all over again. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? So yeah, I went in, and the NHS staffer there, in his tent in the terminal, just absolutely battered my nostrils, and then said, no, came through, you're all clear, off you go. So that was like, after that, it was the best night ever. I slept really well, I was exhausted, and the next day, I got straight on my flight in the morning over to America, and it was all great from there. Which is great, I loved it, you know, but I really do wish that I didn't have to go through all of that stress. But anyway, I grabbed a pint and dinner on the way home, only to find that the trains had been cancelled and had been replaced by buses. This resulted in an hour-long trip home on a badly lit bus with no reading. That was packed to absolute capacity, of course. To make matters worse, I could hear a constant refrain of people coughing, sniffing and sneezing. Grumbling to myself, I got home and rolled myself into bed, only to get a phone call at 10 PM saying, "Sir, we've had issues with your latest results. We're going to need you to come back in tomorrow and retest." I was pissed, but agreed, as there was no way I was putting off this trip. Yeah, you're $3,000 in the hole, man. You're going on this trip. And again, there is hobby in here. You mentioned that you're going to see World of Warcraft people. That's a hobby. So technically. Now, you remember I mentioned the peasants revolting at a parliament? Yeah, that blew up, and blew up big. Cue the majority of New Zealand police being drafted into the city to break up the protest. Trees getting set on fire, windows smashed, stores looted, and just mayhem in general. After I'd gotten into the city, got my nose violently violated again, they shut off the public transit system for the central city, resulting in poor little old me having to catch a taxi home. I have no clue what cab fares cost in the UK, but the $150 ride home stung me hard. Yeah, $150. What's $150 in New Zealand in UK? Let's see. $150 New Zealand in pounds. It is £69. 69 quid's a lot of money. Yeah, for a taxi ride. Yeah. So from Liverpool to Manchester, they normally charge you about 50 quid. That's the airport shuttle, right? So if you get a taxi from here to the airport, it's about 50 quid. So that was an expensive taxi you just got there, my friend. The day of my holiday arrived, and I was buzzed. Everything was in order, and I was good to go. I dropped my dog off at my mother's, transmitted my happy ass into the city, took a call from my worried sister, received a list of demands from my nieces and nephews, and caught the first leg of my trip to Auckland. Just for your reference, I had 3 flights to catch. Wellington to Auckland, which is 1 hour, Auckland to Brisbane, 4 hours, and Brisbane to Cairns, 2.5 hours. What a ball ache. Smooth sailing in the first leg, flight was ahead of schedule. Weather was primo, and I was in a chipper mood, even if I had to wear a mask the whole time. I get it, nobody likes to wear masks, and their effectiveness is dubious at best, but if it makes people more comfortable, then so be it. I'm happy to grin and bear it. This was until I boarded my flight to Brisbane. Boarding took nearly 2 hours. I thought you were never going to get on the plane. Do you know what I mean? I thought it was going to come back as positive so you couldn't get on the plane, but no, you're there, good. Which only makes things more interesting. Boarding took nearly 2 hours. Every seat was taken, and I'd been shoveled into a window seat. I'm a lanky lad, one of the many nicknames I've accrued over the years, and it is long streak of weasel piss. So, long trips folding myself up with 0 leg room is uncomfortable to say the least. I politely asked the gentleman who had the aisle seat if we could swap places. My husband paid for a seat and doesn't want to give it to you. You're just trying to get our upgraded meal without paying for it, screeched out his wife, who was sitting next to me. Multiple heads turned. The husband went red in embarrassment, and my thought was, you bitch. Do you know whose fault this is? I'm going to give you one guess as to what I'm going to say next. It's the husband's fault. It's the husband's fault. Right? Now, again, there's a wonderful podcast back in the day given by one Patrice O'Neill. And he said something very telling. I've gotten a few lessons from that podcast. One of the main ones is this, right? If you're with a woman who likes to shout at people in public, you need to make sure that you take her aside and you tell her that if anything happens because of her shouting at people in public, you will not lift a finger to defend her. Right? I'm being serious. I'm being serious. Okay? So I had a girl back in the day that I used this on, right? Asian girl who I met in London, and we were going out for a bit. And we were in a restaurant, and she ended up shouting at one of the other customers, a guy in the restaurant, right? And I took literally what was from that podcast and said it verbatim to her. Afterwards, right, I didn't do anything. I just got up, paid, and walked off. Didn't want to get into a fight. One, the guy was bigger than me. I might have been able to take him, but it's a close run thing. I don't know, right? I just walk away and leave her there. I walk outside, right? We have a massive argument on the way home, and finally I just snap and stop her in her tracks. Just stop her there, and I say, listen. If you talk to people that way, and you shout at them, what do you think's going to happen? Yep. What's the worst thing that can happen to you? He can try and hit me. Yes, he can try and hit you. Yeah. How are you going to fight back? And she just looked at me like, well, isn't it obvious? Like, you're going to defend me? I said, no, I'm not. Then what? I walk away. Then what? Yeah, but he could have, he could have what? Repeat that again. He could have what? Yeah, he could have smashed your head in. Correct. Men can't do that. Men can't speak to people like this because we live in a world where somebody can beat our brains in for being this way. If you're with a woman like this, make sure you have that conversation with her. Make sure, in no uncertain terms, you say, if you get yourself into trouble by being a bitch, I will not defend you. Okay? I will not defend you. Now, if somebody comes at you for no reason, or if you're completely in the right, in my opinion, you know what I mean, and which should be blaringly obvious, then I will defend you. But if you go after people, if you're rude to people, and you're getting your just desserts, I will not defend you. That clears it up right there and then. Right there. And if she doesn't want to do that, she can walk away and find somebody else. Find some other idiot who's going to get into a fight with her, for her, in the street. I will not do that. I will not get into a fight because of a bloody woman. No, thank you. I will defend your honour. I will get behind you. I will make sure nobody messes with you. Yes. But if you get yourself into trouble, you've gotten yourself into trouble. It's no business of mine. Sorry, no. Absolutely not. You need to learn that you need to treat people with respect. And if that requires a smack in the face by somebody else, a stranger on the street, then that's what it requires, I'm afraid. Human beings shouldn't go around acting this way. This is the husband's fault. She's just being entitled because she's entitled. Because this is how she's been brought up, right? She's been brought up to think no man will ever raise his hand to me. I can say what I want to them and get away with it. But I'm sorry, ladies, there's always a chance you will catch one guy who's a bit unhinged right at the wrong moment. Right? You get in his face in the street and he just snaps and kills you. And he wouldn't need very much strength to do so either. Just be aware. Just be aware. I've seen it happen in the street, right? Both things. I've seen women have a go at men in the street and get away with it more times than I'd care to count. And I've seen one or two instances when working in bars where I've seen people getting people's faces and then get glassed for the privilege, right? Because a man has had enough and has had one drink too many and has literally lashed out. Dude, that should never happen to you. But, you know, if you're the one in the wrong and getting in his face, you know, if I was a guy and I did that, exactly the same thing would happen to me. It's called an equal outcome. You know? Anyway, moving on. Well, it was time to put this Karen in her place. So I settled for the more petty option of continually ordering drinks, reaching across to get them, and then in the half of the trip making multiple toilet trips, resulting in her having to get up as I couldn't squeeze past her heifer-like body. Dude, that is the most passive-aggressive thing I've ever heard in my life. That's really funny. I landed at Brisbane, transferred to the domestic terminal, snagged a SIM card for my phone, and was happily shocked at the comparative price in phone services. I was, however, not impressed with the price of a beer and a meal while I waited. $30 for a subway equivalent and a drink was highway robbery. I expected to pay more in an airport, but $13 for a beer almost made me want to say I didn't want it. Almost. And boy, was I glad to have gotten something to eat in between flights, because surely enough, while en route to Cairns, I was horrified to find out the airline's idea of a dinner was a pie. That's right, North. A single, solitary pie. The only upside is half the plane was empty, so I could at least stretch my legs. Dude, were you in the north of England? We all love pies up here. Not that I can have any because the carb intake, but you know what I mean. Grumbling to myself over the lax quality of food on the flight, I exited the terminal and I was hit with two pieces of information. One, the heat literally slammed me in the face as the terminal doors opened. I'd gone from a temperate 20 degrees to a tropical 38 at 10 PM at night. Two, the sickening crunch of a horde of black beetles that formed the miniature carpet being trampled on underfoot. I caught a cab, checked into my local hotel room, and was surprisingly nice and looked exactly like the picture on the website, and crashed out exhausted from 8 hours in a plane and 6+ hours of wait time. I woke up at 8 AM, rolled out of bed into the shower, and then headed out to get some breakfast and pick up the essentials. Exiting the hotel lobby, I was again struck with the crunch of beetles underfoot and the sledgehammer of 28 degrees straight to the face at 8 AM. I grabbed some Vietnamese for breakfast, it was so good, grabbed a bunch of hygiene products and a slab of water, and started my holiday proper. What ensued was 2 days of socialising, eating, drinking, shopping and getting tattooed. However, I was tired the whole time and was getting the occasional coughs. I'm a smoker, and this is normal, so I ignored it. To speed up my story, I'll cut a heap of details, but the small things started to occur. We made plans for dinner 3 times, but 2/3 of the restaurants were closed. Most of the local attractions were closed, or I was too tired to partake in them. My friends had things crop up whilst I was there that they couldn't ignore, and I would not have joined them for. I discovered the oddly shaped birds were in fact gigantic fuck-off bats that like to slowly glide around the inner city 2 to 3 feet above people's heads. These are not your tiny little winged mice. These things are the size of seagulls or bigger. Real horror movie material. A woman I was talking to at the hotel bar happened to be a call girl, and as I didn't know what the code of buy me a drink was, it resulted in a rather irate lady of the night and a rather red-faced me. My tattoo took me half a day to source, as most of the local parlours were busy. When I finally went under the needle, I was coughing so much, it took the poor guy an extra hour to do so. I left Cairns happy overall with my trip, and with a bag full of goodies for my family, but the worst was yet to come. Dude, you paid $3,000 for a weekend trip? What is wrong with that country? $3,000? Dude, I could go to the arse end of Scotland for like £100. And knowing the Scottish, I could probably like blag a place on somebody's couch for free. What's wrong with you people? I landed in Brisbane, toddled off for my 3rd and hopefully last nasal violation, then proceeded to queue up to check in for my return flight, and my heart sunk. The queue was gigantic, at least a couple of hundred people. I spent the next hour trudging step by step closer to the counter, and when I drew near the head of the queue, my phone rang. Mr. Smith, this is the airport testing centre. We need you to come down to our office immediately. Do not board your plane. My heart sunk. I'd failed my damn test, which meant I was stuck in Brisbane for at least a week. Sometime in the 3 days I'd caught Nurgle's chicken plague, and I'd been running around like I'd owned the world. I left the check-in area and was handed a list of transport companies and told to sort out my accommodation for the following week as I was officially stranded. Yeah, this is what I mean about Australia, man. Like, why the hell do you need to do it yourself? It's awful. Then again, you are the one taking the holiday. Yeah, I don't know. Again, I'll cut a lot of text here and just bullet point what happened over the next following week. 1. I booked an Airbnb, but since I'm unfamiliar with the app, ended up buying 3 separate ones instead of just the one I booked. One of the B&B owners contacted me to find out why I hadn't gone with his option, so I explained, and they gave me the max refund he could, $600. The Airbnb was in Ipswich. Bloody hell, that's a long way away. Which, for most of your viewers, is in the badonkadonks, miles away from Brisbane. Travel to the Airbnb would cost $250. When I arrived, I found out that not only was there no Wi-Fi, the TV had no USB port to plug in the drive I take with me for entertainment purposes. My sister sent her friend over with a care package of food and a couple of books, which the neighbours swiped. Only just got a flight within the time frame required by the insurance company to cover. They had a specific 3-day window after your viability to travel from the plague. After that, everything else was at your own cost. When I was finally cleared to travel, I again double booked accommodation in Brisbane. Got off the train in Brisbane at the wrong stop, spent 45 minutes walking to my accommodation before giving up and catching a cab. Dude, you must be broke. You're broke. That's it. 1 weekend trip to Australia and you're broke. When I finally got home, I picked up my dog, started the insurance claim for all the extra costs which I had incurred, then crashed out hard. So yeah, that's my tale of woe. I hope some of your viewers take something out of this, and I'll finish with the following points of advice for anyone that's planning on travelling. 1. You're not invulnerable, and shit is going to go wrong. Always have a backup plan. And number 2, get travel insurance. Always, regardless. Thanks for reading, North. Thanks for the content that keeps me sane at work, and maybe sometime soon I will write about the first Vampire the Masquerade game I ran in 20 years. Cheers, man. Yeah, cool. I like it. All good stuff. Let me take a sip of tea here. All good stuff. Yeah, get insurance. Do not be like this guy. I mean, he went over there to play World of Warcraft with his friends and ended up with, you know, some really, really, really bad things going down. That was, even for a hobby nightmare, that was pretty cool. I like that one. Sometimes the travel to and from your hobby experience is the nightmare. You know? But dude, are things in Australia that expensive? Aussies, let me know. Let me know. Is it that expensive? That's ridiculous. $3,000 for a weekend. Stay at home, dude. You live in New Zealand. I would be so annoyed to leave New Zealand and then go to Australia for $3,000 for 2 days. I'd be like, why? I may as well have just taken this $3,000 out and thrown it in the sea. Anyway, Sarah is back, ladies and gents. Sarah is back with another cringe hobby nightmare. She says, "Hello, Northern Exile. It's Sarah, and I've decided to send in that creep story that I've told you about. Okay? If you or your listeners don't believe this this retelling, I won't blame you. It's so bizarre and unusual, sometimes even I am amazed that it happened to me." Okay. Alright. Some time ago, I began collecting Imperial Knights as my second army. I started off as Tyranids in high school, but after seeing John Blanche's Black Templar art, I switched over to them. I didn't have a full-time job back then, so I sold off the Tyranids to pay for the Templars. Anyway, the time had come to get my second army, and it was going to be the Big Knights, a good change from building, painting and playing the smaller models. I was looking around everywhere for the large box that can be built as Canis Rex. He has always been a popular option, and I was struggling to find one where I lived. Canis Rex's pilot, Sir Hector the Chainbreaker, has a very cool lore. He was captured by Chaos Astartes, then prayed to the Emperor for a miracle. Hector's knight then activated by itself and started laying waste to the enemies of mankind, and the two have been kicking butt ever since. So, I was calling stores and I telephoned a place I had never been that sold hobby stuff. They had one box left. I said I was on my way to collect it. I drove and parked nearby, then walked to the store. As I entered, the staffer, Jess, waved at me and said, "Oh, it's over in the back corner." Jess was a stout girl with purple hair with some gothic jewellery on her hands and face. She also had a heap of piercings. Cool. I beamed and dashed to the corner. There he was, the night box and my future Canis Rex. I bent down and grabbed the box with both hands, pleased as punch. "What's that?" said a male voice from very close behind me. I'll admit I got a bit startled. I stood up and quickly turned around. There was a guy there, standing less than an arm's length away from me. "Stick out your arm in front of you." Yeah, he was closer than that. Okay. Ooh. Yeah, and I have big arms too. Yeah, big strong arms, ladies. Just saying. Not single, but just saying. Right, that is close. That is weird. Yeah, that is pretty good. That is really cool that you can. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. He was wearing a pink summer dress. Of course. Ah, an Emperor's Children player. Of course. But of course. You always know who it's going to be, don't you? You always know it's going to be, you know, the guy in the dress. It's going to be one of them. He was wearing a pink summer dress. Had on a colourful backpack, a black headband on, long shoulder-length hair. He was skinny and wore gold women's flats. It's an Imperial Knight, I said awkwardly. Is it some kind of robot? He asked. I noticed he had a very peculiar smell, like perfume over some sort of body musk. It wasn't BO, but was very unusual. Yeah, I've come across that. I know how that smells. Yes. Go figure. Worked for Games Workshop and a hobby store for a couple of years. I know what that smell is like. Yeah, it has a human pilot, I answered. It looks like a toy. Do you play with toys? The guy asked. He was smiling and still close to me. It's a model. You put it together with glue and you paint it. Oh, right. A model. The guy looked around the store. This place looks like it's pretty male-dominated. It's cool that us girls are waving the female flag around here. I looked around. It wasn't very busy, except for some Magic the Gathering players. Well, the staff member is a girl, I pointed out. The guy looked at Jess, then shrugged. She works here, she doesn't count. Us girls have to stick together in male-dominated spheres, you know. While we were speaking, he kept looking down at the ground between us. I thought it was a nervous tick or something. Looking back, I think he was trying to get me to agree we were both girls. I don't do that sort of stuff, but there was no way that I was risking getting into a debate on the topic whilst this guy had me cornered in a quiet store. I decided being non-committal was the best option, and I definitely did not want a confrontation. Because of how the shelves were laid out, the space was quite narrow, and he kind of had me blocked in. I'm just going to buy this, I said, holding the night box in front of me like some sort of document that would allow me to pass. He didn't move, and I couldn't really squeeze past him without touching him. Wow, that's expensive. You must be rich, the guy said. Oh no, this is pretty much the one thing I like to buy, at least for myself. You have more of these? He asked. Not this exact one, but other ones, sure, I replied. Cool, do you have photos? Before I knew what I was saying, I said yes, then immediately cringed on the inside. Stupid Sarah, very stupid. Show me and I'll show you some of my toys, the guy offered excitedly, and he started taking out his phone. Okay, I'm just going to say I know what kind of toys these are going to be. Let's just see. Let's just see if I'm right. Let's just see if I'm right. Oh, that's okay. I just need to pay for the stuff and then I have to go, you know? I said. I started to really feel like something was wrong. That sixth sense feeling where your subconscious is telling you, move, 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 get out of there. I know this guy wasn't doing anything except politely talking to me and inadvertently blocking my path, but the dress, the weird smell, asking to see photos on my phone, was making me very uneasy. It's pretty hot out here. Why don't you chill in the store with me for a bit? He offered. I really need to go. Can I get past you, please? Oh, yeah, of course. You have such a petite figure, especially your feet. What size are you? He asked. Oh, how did I know he was going to go there? I don't know. I started trying to flash Jess the help me eyes from behind the counter, but she was busy chatting with some customers. I was desperate to get out of there. I just wanted to pay for my Canis Rex and go. You don't know your shoe size? Take one off and I'll check, he offered. No, that's okay. Please excuse me. I decided to risk squeezing past him, and suddenly dashed sidelong past his shoulder, my night box hitting his arm. As I got past, he said to the back of my head, Hey, wait, before you go, can I have your socks? Nah, man. Nah. Surely not. Surely not. Yep, you read that right. This is the strangest question anybody has ever asked me, and it made my skin crawl for reasons I can't explain. It was so unexpected it actually stopped me dead in my tracks. What? No! I turned to look at him. Please? I'll buy them from you for $50, he asked. I didn't say anything. I turned and started walking as quickly as I could to Jess at the counter. The guy was hot on my heels. 100, he offered. Jess looked up and my face must have said I was in a bit of trouble. Hey, are you okay? She asked loudly and sternly. I shook my head. This guy won't leave me alone. Jess looked at him and said, Get the hell out of here now. The guy said, But I didn't now or I'll call the cops, Jess said, not messing about. The guy stormed out of the shop, looking over his shoulder at us as he left. Wow. I'm sorry, I watched that person follow you in through the store. I thought you were together. What happened? Jess asked. I briefly told her, and she offered to call the police for real. This is where I learned her name. I thought about it. But what had he really done? Got in my way in a cramped store, spoke innocently to me and offered to buy a non-intimate piece of clothing. I decided not to, and finally paid for my night and went home. I later learned that I should have told the police because they can put warnings on people, and it's just likely this happened to others too. I know it's nothing crazy, you didn't touch me or threaten me, but it truly creeped me out. I still think about it because of how bizarre it is. I'm not saying I'm a victim or anything like that, just thought you might like one real creepy story I had. Thanks, Sarah. Dude. Again, a lot of dudes struggle to figure that these things are real, you know? Mainly because we're all very cynical, and at least a few of us have had false flag attacks at either our friends or at us over the years, where a woman said something that she shouldn't have and gotten one of your friends, or even yourself, into trouble when you did nothing wrong, right? Yeah. It's like kind of like, you know, when they say like everybody knows one person who, yeah, well every dude knows at least one other dude who went through something like this despite doing nothing of the sort, right? Yeah. But on the flip side of that, you know, part of being somebody who's either a centrist or somebody who thinks critically is being able to take somebody's point of view or life experience and be like, do you know what? You know, I've heard enough of these kinds of things to know that they probably happen more often than I think. And I think at least every woman in the hobby has one, maybe two if you're unlucky, but at least one interaction that's kind of like this. Maybe not as blatantly bad, but one that's made their skin crawl, right? Do you know what I'm saying? If you've been that person, maybe write in a hobby nightmare or put it in the comment section. That'd be pretty cool. Look at me being an idiot here and trying to like shoot the Biotitan with a bolt pistol. There you go. That's gonna work, dude. But anyway, yeah, so maybe like put it in the comment section down below if it's happened to you. I've come across many stories like this. No, none of them as openly terrible, but definitely bad. So, you know, it sucks, but there we are. Anyway, I love you all a long time. I will speak to you on Sunday when we're going to be rebuilding another Legion. I think it's Imperial Fists. So that's going to be cool. All right, I'll see you then. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll speak to you soon. Have a good one. Bye now.